If you had told Marisa Alvarez just a week ago that her life would change forever because of a phone call she almost didn't answer, she would have laughed, or maybe cried. Because for Marisa, laughter and tears had become two sides of the same coin. One she flipped every morning as she hustled to get her 7-year-old daughter, Lila, ready for school, then raced to her job at the bakery. Then back home to their cramped apartment above the laundromat. She was used to the grind, the endless calculations, how to stretch a paycheck, how to keep the car running, how to keep Lila's shoes from falling apart before the next sale at the outlet mall. She was not used to miracles, or mysteries, or the kind of secrets that could turn a life upside down. But that's exactly what happened on a rainy Thursday, when the phone rang just as Marisa was elbow-deep in flour, rolling out dough for the morning's cinnamon rolls. She almost let it go to voicemail. The number was unfamiliar, and she'd learned the hard way that unfamiliar numbers usually meant trouble: bill collectors, telemarketers, or, worst of all, her ex-husband's latest attempt to worm his way back into their lives. But something made her wipe her hands on her apron and pick up. "Hello, is this Marisa Alvarez?" The voice was crisp, professional, with a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "This is Marisa," she replied, wary. "My name is Elena Duarte. I'm an attorney with Duarte and Associates, representing the estate of Captain Tomas Alvarez. I believe he was your grandfather." Marisa's heart skipped. She barely remembered her grandfather, a stern man in faded photographs, always in uniform, always looking out to sea. He'd died when she was a child, and her father never spoke of him. "I'm sorry, there must be a mistake. My grandfather passed away years ago." "Yes, ma'am. But his estate has only recently come to light. There are assets, and you are the sole surviving heir. I'd like to discuss the details in person if possible." "Assets?" Marisa almost laughed. Her family didn't have assets. They had debts and memories and a few boxes of old letters, but something in the woman's voice made her pause. "What kind of assets?" "I'd prefer to explain in person." "Are you available tomorrow morning?" Marisa hesitated. She had work, and Lila had school, and the rent was due in 5 days. But curiosity and maybe a sliver of hope won out. "I can meet after I drop my daughter at school." "Excellent. I'll text you the address." "Thank you, Ms. Alvarez." The call ended, leaving Marisa staring at her phone, heart pounding. She tried to shake it off, but the rest of the day passed in a blur. That night, after Lila was asleep, Marisa dug out the old photo album her father had left behind. There was her grandfather, Captain Tomas Alvarez, standing on the deck of a ship, the ocean behind him endless and wild. She traced his face with her finger, wondering what secrets he'd taken to his grave. The next morning, Marisa dropped Lila at school and drove across town to a sleek office building she'd never noticed before. The lobby smelled of lemon polish and money. She felt out of place in her thrift store jeans and faded jacket. But the receptionist greeted her with a warm smile and led her to a glass-walled conference room. Elena Duarte was waiting, impeccably dressed, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She stood and shook Marisa's hand. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Marisa sat, clutching her purse. "So, what is this about?" Elena opened a folder and slid a document across the table. "Your grandfather left behind a trust. It was only recently discovered, due to a series of legal complications. The trust includes ownership of a property in Key Largo, as well as the rights to a shipwreck, specifically the cargo of the Santa Lucia, a freighter that sank in 1972. Marisa blinked. "A shipwreck?" "Yes. The Santa Lucia was carrying a cargo of industrial equipment, but according to recently uncovered manifests, it was also transporting a private collection of gold bullion and rare artifacts, valued, conservatively, at over $200 million. Marisa stared at her. "This is a joke, right?" Elena smiled gently. "I assure you it's not. The wreck was discovered last year by a team of divers, but the legal ownership was unclear until now. As Captain Alvarez's only living descendant, you are the rightful heir." Marisa's mind reeled. $200 million? It was impossible. It was insane. It was terrifying. Elena continued. "There are, of course, complications. Salvage rights, government claims, and I must warn you, considerable interest from parties who may not have your best interests at heart. I strongly advise you to retain legal counsel and proceed with caution." Marisa nodded numbly. I don't know what to say." "Take your time. I'll provide you with all the documentation. And Ms. Alvarez, be careful. Not everyone who comes looking for treasure is a friend." The meeting ended, and Marisa walked out into the sunlight, the world suddenly brighter and more dangerous. She drove home in a daze, the words $200 million echoing in her mind. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what her grandfather had gotten her into. The next day, Marisa received a package at her door. Inside was a set of old keys, a faded map, and a letter in her grandfather's spidery handwriting. My dearest Marissa, if you are reading this, then fate has brought you to the crossroads I could never face. The Santa Lucia was more than a ship. It was a promise and a curse. There are those who would kill to possess what lies beneath the waves. Trust no one. Follow the map. And remember, the greatest treasures are not always gold. Love. Tomás Marissa's hands shook as she read the letter. She looked at the map, an old nautical chart, with a red X marked off the coast of Key Largo. She thought of Lila, sleeping in the next room, and felt a surge of fear and determination. She didn't know what she was about to face, but she knew one thing. She would do whatever it took to protect her daughter, and to uncover the truth her grandfather had died to keep hidden. Marissa barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the ocean, dark, endless, hiding secrets beneath its surface. She saw her grandfather's face, stern and sad, and the red X on the map burned into her mind. By morning, she'd made up her mind. She would go to Key Largo. She would see the property, find the shipwreck, and try to understand what she'd inherited. But first, she had to figure out how to get there. At breakfast, Lila noticed her mother's distraction. "Are you okay, Mama?" she asked, her big brown eyes searching Marissa's face. Marissa forced a smile. "I'm just thinking about something important, honey. How would you like to go on a little adventure this weekend?" Lila's face lit up. "Like a treasure hunt?" Marissa laughed, surprised at how close her daughter had come to the truth. "Something like that." After dropping Lila at school, Marissa called in sick to work. She packed a bag, grabbed the keys and map, and set out for Key Largo. The drive was long, the highway stretching out between the mainland and the islands, the water on either side sparkling in the morning sun. She tried to calm her nerves, telling herself this was just a formality. She'd see the property, maybe talk to some lawyers, and then go home. But deep down, she knew nothing would ever be the same. The address led her to a small, weathered house on the edge of a marina. The paint was peeling, the yard overgrown, but the view of the water was breathtaking. Marissa unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled of salt and old wood. Sunlight filtered through dusty windows, illuminating a room filled with nautical charts, faded photographs, and shelves lined with books about shipwrecks and maritime law. She wandered through the house, touching the objects her grandfather had left behind. There was a sense of loneliness here, but also of purpose. In the back room, she found a desk covered in papers. Among them was a journal, its leather cover cracked with age. She opened it and began to read. March 12, 1972. The Santa Lucia sets sail tomorrow. The cargo is loaded. Officially, machinery and supplies, but hidden among the crates are the real treasures. Gold, artifacts, secrets that could change the world. I have agreed to keep them safe, but I fear what may come. There are men who would do anything to possess this cargo. I must be vigilant. Marissa's heart pounded as she read. The entries continued, detailing the voyage, the storm that struck off the coast, and the frantic efforts to save the ship. The final entry was short, April 2nd, 1972. We are sinking. The crew is abandoning ship. I have hidden the manifest and the key. If anyone finds this, know that I did what I had to do. She closed the journal, her hands trembling. The story was real. The gold, the artifacts, they were out there, somewhere beneath the waves, and now they belonged to her. A knock at the door startled her. She froze, heart racing. Who would know she was here? She crept to the window and peeked out. A man stood on the porch, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bleached hair and a weathered face. He wore a faded Coast Guard jacket and held a folder in his hand. Marissa hesitated, then opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" The man smiled, friendly but cautious. "You must be Marissa Alvarez." "I'm Jake Mercer. I run the marina next door. Elena Duarte asked me to check in on you, make sure you got settled." Marissa relaxed a little. "Thank you. I just got here." Jake handed her the folder. "These are the keys to the dock and the boat slip. There's also a list of local contacts, divers, salvage crews, that sort of thing. If you need anything, just ask." She took the folder. "Grateful. Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Call me Jake, and Marissa, be careful. Word gets around fast in a place like this. If you need help, I'm just next door." He left, and Marissa closed the door, her mind spinning. She sat at the desk and opened the folder. Inside was a set of keys labeled Slip 14, a marina map, and a list of names and phone numbers. There was also a note from Elena. "Trust no one. If you feel threatened, call me immediately." Marissa stared at the note, the weight of her situation settling on her shoulders. She was in over her head. But she couldn't turn back now. That afternoon, she walked down to the marina. The docks creaked under her feet, the air thick with the smell of salt and diesel. She found Slip 14 at the far end, where an old fishing boat bobbed gently in the water. The name Esperanza was painted on the stern in faded letters. She climbed aboard, heart pounding. The boat was small but sturdy, with a cramped cabin and a deck cluttered with gear. She found a waterproof case under the bench seat. Inside was a dive log, a set of nautical charts, and a waterproof pouch containing a small, ornate key. Marissa turned the key over in her hand, wondering what it opened. She studied the charts, tracing the route her grandfather had marked. The red X was just a few miles offshore, in a patch of deep water known for strong currents and treacherous reefs. As the sun set, Marissa sat on the deck, watching the sky turn gold and pink. She thought of her grandfather, of the secrets he'd kept, and of the fortune waiting beneath the waves. She thought of Lila, and the life she wanted to give her. She knew the risks, but she also knew she couldn't walk away. That night she called Elena. "I found the key and the charts. I think I know where the wreck is." Elena's voice was calm but urgent. "Good. But be careful, Marissa. There are people who have been searching for that ship for decades. If they find out you're here, they won't stop until they get what they want." Marissa nodded, even though Elena couldn't see her. "I understand. I'll be careful." She hung up and sat in the darkness, listening to the sound of the waves against the hull. She was scared, but she was also determined. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was part of something bigger, a story that had started long before she was born, and that she was now destined to finish. The next morning, Marissa woke before dawn, the marina still shrouded in mist. She made coffee in the tiny galley of the Esperanza, her hands steady despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach. She checked the charts again, memorizing the coordinates her grandfather had marked. The red X was just outside the reef, in waters known to be both beautiful and deadly. She'd need help to dive there. Someone who knew the currents, the dangers, and the unspoken rules of salvage. She scanned the list of contacts Jake had given her. One name stood out: Sofia Reyes. Diver, marine biologist, salvage expert. Marissa dialed the number, her heart thumping. A woman answered, her voice brisk and alert. "Sophia, hi, my name is Marissa Alvarez. I was given your number by Jake Mercer. I need help with a dive." "It's important." There was a pause. "How important?" Marissa hesitated, then decided on honesty. "It's about the Santa Lucia. My grandfather was the captain. I think I know where it went down." Another pause, longer this time. "Meet me at the Marina Cafe in an hour." "Bring the charts," Marissa agreed, then quickly gathered the map, the key, and her grandfather's journal. She left the boat, locking it behind her, and walked to the cafe. The place was small and bustling, filled with fishermen and locals sipping strong coffee. Sophia was easy to spot, tall, athletic, with sun-streaked hair pulled into a ponytail, and a face that looked like it had weathered 1,000 storms. Sophia gestured for Marissa to sit. "Let me see what you've got." Marissa spread the charts and the journal on the table. Sophia studied them, her eyes narrowing as she traced the route and the coordinates. "This is real," she murmured. "I've heard stories about the Santa Lucia for years. People say it was carrying gold, art, maybe even secrets from the Cold War, but no one's ever found it. My grandfather left me the map and the key," Marissa said quietly. "I think he wanted me to finish what he started." Sophia looked up, her gaze sharp. "You know this won't be easy. That area is dangerous. And if word gets out, you'll have every treasure hunter in Florida on your tail." "I know," Marissa replied, "but I have to try." "For my daughter, for my family," Sophia nodded, respect in her eyes. "All right, I'll help you. But we do this my way. Safe, quiet, and fast. We'll need gear, a boat, and a cover story. And you'll need to trust me," Marissa agreed, relief flooding through her. They made a plan. Sophia would gather the dive equipment and supplies, while Marissa would prepare the Esperanza and keep a low profile. They'd set out at first light the next day. Back at the marina, Marissa checked on the boat and called Lila, who was staying with her best friend for the weekend. Hearing her daughter's voice, bright and cheerful, gave Marissa strength. "I love you, Mama," Lila said. "Are you finding treasure?" Marissa smiled, her heart aching. "Maybe, sweetheart. I'll tell you all about it when I get home." After the call, Marissa noticed a man watching her from across the dock. He was tall, with a shaved head and mirrored sunglasses, dressed in expensive casual clothes that didn't fit the laid-back marina vibe. He turned away when she looked at him, but Marissa felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered Elena's warning, trust no one. That night, Marissa and Sophia met on the Esperanza to go over the plan. Sophia brought a duffel bag filled with wetsuits, oxygen tanks, underwater lights, and a waterproof camera. She also brought a small, battered pistol, which she handed to Marissa. "Just in case," Sophia said. "You never know who's out there." Marissa took the gun, her hands trembling. She'd never held one before, but she understood the necessity. They reviewed the charts, double-checked the gear, and set their alarms for 4 a.m. As Marissa lay in the narrow bunk, she thought about her grandfather, about the choices he'd made, the secrets he'd kept, and the burden he'd passed on to her. She wondered if he'd ever imagined his granddaughter would be the one to finish his story. She wondered if she was strong enough. Before dawn, they set out. The marina was silent, the water glassy and still. Sofia piloted the Esperanza out of the harbor, her movements confident and precise. Marisa watched the shoreline recede, her nerves taut as piano wire. They reached the coordinates just as the sun broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Sofia dropped anchor and began prepping the dive gear. "We'll go down together," she said. "Stay close, follow my lead, and if anything feels wrong, we come up." "No treasure is worth your life," Marisa nodded, pulling on the wetsuit and checking her oxygen tank. She clipped the key to a lanyard around her neck, feeling its weight against her chest. They slipped into the water, the world above vanishing in a rush of bubbles and cold. The ocean was a different universe, silent, vast, and full of secrets. They followed the anchor line down, the light fading as they descended. At 30 meters, the wreck came into view, a twisted shape half buried in sand and coral, its hull split open by decades of storms. Marissa's heart pounded as they swam closer. She saw the name Santa Lucia faintly visible on the stern, the letters worn by time and salt. Sofia signaled for her to follow. They entered the wreck through a jagged hole in the side, their lights cutting through the darkness. Inside, the ship was a maze of collapsed beams and tangled wires. Fish darted through the shadows, and the silence was broken only by the sound of their breathing. Marisa led the way, following the map and her grandfather's notes. They reached the cargo hold, where crates lay scattered and broken. In the far corner, hidden behind a fallen beam, was a small, rusted safe. Marisa's hands shook as she pulled out the key and fitted into the lock. It turned with a click, and the safe creaked open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were bars of gold, dozens of them, stamped with foreign seals and serial numbers. There were also velvet pouches filled with jewels, and a leather-bound ledger covered in her grandfather's handwriting. Marisa stared, unable to breathe. She'd found it. The fortune, the secret, the inheritance that would change everything. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Marisa hovered in the dim, blue-lit cargo hold, her gloved hands trembling as she reached for the gold. Sofia's flashlight beam danced over the bars, illuminating the stamped crests, Spanish, British, even a few with markings she didn't recognize. The jewels sparkled in their pouches, deep reds and blues and greens, colors that seemed almost impossible in the cold, silent world beneath the sea. Sofia tapped Marissa's shoulder, her eyes wide behind her mask. She pointed to the ledger, then to her underwater camera. Marisa nodded, understanding. They needed proof, photos, documentation, before they touched anything. Sofia snapped pictures of the gold, the jewels, the open safe, and the ledger. Marissa's mind raced. This was more than a fortune. This was history, lost and found. But even as awe filled her, a new fear crept in. Her grandfather's warnings echoed in her mind. There are those who would kill to possess what lies beneath the waves. Trust no one. Sofia signaled that they should return to the surface. Marisa nodded, carefully closing the safe and tucking the ledger into her waterproof bag. They retraced their path through the wreck, careful not to disturb the fragile structure. As they emerged into open water, Marisa felt a surge of relief. The sunlight above was a promise, a way back to the world she knew. They broke the surface, gasping for air, and climbed back onto the Esperanza. Sofia immediately began downloading the photos to her laptop, her hands moving quickly, efficiently. Marisa peeled off her wetsuit, her body shaking with adrenaline and cold. "We did it," she whispered, barely believing it. Sofia grinned, her face flushed with excitement. "You did it. Your grandfather would be proud." Marisa smiled, but her mind was already racing ahead. What now? How could she protect this treasure and herself from the dangers she knew were coming? As they secured the gear, Marisa noticed a boat on the horizon, moving fast. It was sleek, white, and out of place among the fishing vessels and tour boats that usually dotted the area. Sofia followed her gaze, her expression darkening. "That's not good," she muttered. "We need to get out of here. Now." They fired up the engine and headed back toward the marina, keeping a wary eye on the pursuing boat. It followed at a distance, never closing in but never falling back. Marissa's heart pounded. She thought of Lila, of the life she wanted to build, and of the men her grandfather had warned her about. When they reached the marina, Sofia docked the Esperanza and quickly helped Marisa unload the gear. "Take the ledger and the photos," she said. "Hide them somewhere safe. I'll keep an eye on the boat." Marisa nodded, clutching the waterproof bag to her chest. She hurried back to the house, locking the door behind her. She hid the ledger and the flash drive with the photos in a hollow space beneath the floorboards, then sat on the edge of the bed, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Her phone buzzed. It was Elena. "Marisa, are you all right?" "We found it," Marisa whispered. "The gold, the jewels, everything. But someone followed us back." "I think they know," Elena's voice was tense. "Listen to me. Do not trust anyone. Not the police, not the marina staff, not even Sophia, unless you're sure. There are people who have been waiting for this moment for decades. They will stop at nothing." Marisa swallowed hard. "What should I do?" "Lay low. I'll be there in the morning. And Marisa, don't tell anyone else. Not even your daughter." "Not yet." After the call, Marisa sat in the dark, listening to the distant sound of waves. She thought about her grandfather, about the choices he'd made, and about the burden he'd left her. She wondered if he'd ever felt this alone, this afraid. A knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts. She froze, heart pounding. Another knock, louder this time. "Marisa?" "It's Jake." She hesitated, then opened the door a crack. Jake stood on the porch, concern etched on his face. "I saw you come back in a hurry." "Everything okay?" Marisa forced a smile. "Just tired." "Long day." Jake nodded, but his eyes lingered on her face. "If you need anything, you know where to find me." She thanked him and closed the door, locking it behind her. She knew Jake meant well, but Elena's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one. That night, Marisa barely slept. Every sound made her jump. She dreamed of the ocean, of gold and shadows, of her grandfather's voice calling her name. When dawn finally broke, she felt more exhausted than ever. Elena arrived just after sunrise, her expression grim. She listened as Marisa recounted everything. The dive, the safe, the boat that had followed them. "We need to move fast," Elena said. "The authorities will want a cut, and the wrong people will want everything. We need to secure the site, document everything, and make sure you and Lila are safe." Marisa nodded, determination hardening inside her. She wouldn't let fear win. She wouldn't let her grandfather's legacy be stolen by greed or violence. As Elena made calls and Sophia checked the boat for tampering, Marisa sat at the kitchen table, the ledger open before her. She traced her grandfather's handwriting, feeling a connection across time and distance. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. She would fight for her family, for the truth, and for the treasure that had cost so much. The morning sun crept higher, casting long shadows across the marina as Marisa. Elena and Sophia gathered around the kitchen table. The ledger lay open, its pages filled with careful notes, sketches of the Santa Lucia's cargo hold, and cryptic references to the true cost of gold. Marisa ran her fingers over the faded ink, feeling the weight of her grandfather's secrets. Elena spoke first, her voice low and urgent. "We need to make a plan. The authorities will want to claim the wreck, and if word gets out, every treasure hunter from Miami to Havana will descend on this place. We have to control the narrative." Sophia nodded. "We have photos, the ledger, and the location. That's leverage. But we need to be smart. If we go public too soon, we lose everything. If we wait too long, someone else might take it from us." Marisa listened, her mind racing. She thought of Lila, safe for now, but vulnerable if things went wrong. She thought of the men in the white boat, of Jake's concerned face, of the way the marina seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to happen. Elena continued, "First, we secure the evidence. The ledger and the photos stay hidden. Second, we need to document the site thoroughly. Video, sonar scans, anything that proves you're the rightful heir and that the cargo is real. Third, we need to decide what to do with the treasure. Sell it, donate it, split it with the government?" Marisa shook her head. "I don't want to sell it. Not all of it. Some of those artifacts belong in museums. The gold, maybe it can help people. I just want to make sure Lila is safe, that she has a future." Sophia smiled, a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. "You're braver than you think, Marisa. Most people would run," Marisa shrugged. "I don't have the luxury of running, not anymore." They spent the next few hours planning. Sophia would arrange for a trusted dive team to help document the wreck. Elena would contact a maritime lawyer she trusted, someone with experience in international salvage law. Marisa would keep a low profile, staying close to the house and the boat, watching for any signs of trouble. By noon, the marina was bustling. Boats came and went, fishermen unloaded their catch, tourists snapped photos of pelicans perched on the pilings. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Marisa felt eyes on her everywhere she went. The man with the shaved head was back, leaning against a lamppost, pretending to check his phone. A woman in a sun hat lingered near the dock, her gaze lingering on the Esperanza. Marisa tried to ignore them, focusing on Lila's voice when she called to check in. "Are you having fun, Mama?" Lila asked, her voice bright and innocent. "I am, sweetheart. I miss you. I'll be home soon." After the call, Marisa sat on the porch, watching the water. She thought about her grandfather, about the choices he'd made. She wondered if he'd ever regretted hiding the treasure, if he'd ever wished for a simpler life. Sophia joined her, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "You okay?" Marissa nodded. "Just thinking. About what comes next." Sophia sat beside her, staring out at the boats. "You know, I grew up around here. My father was a fisherman. He used to say the sea gives and the sea takes. I never understood what he meant until I started diving. There's always a price." Marissa sipped her coffee, the warmth steadying her. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Sophia shrugged. "There's no right or wrong when it comes to treasure, just choices. You're trying to do good. That's more than most." They sat in silence, the sound of gulls and waves filling the air. Marissa felt a strange sense of peace, as if the ocean itself was watching over her. That afternoon, Elena returned with news. "The lawyer's on board. He says we have a strong case, but we need to act fast. The state will try to claim the wreck under maritime law, but with the ledger and your grandfather's will, we can prove it's yours. We just need to keep everything quiet until the paperwork is filed." Marissa nodded, relief and anxiety warring inside her. "What about the people watching us?" Elena's expression darkened. "I have a friend in law enforcement. He's going to run some plates, see if anyone's been asking questions. In the meantime, stay alert. Don't go anywhere alone." That night, Marissa lay awake, listening to the creak of the house, the distant hum of boat engines. She thought about the gold, the jewels, the ledger. She thought about Lila, about the future she wanted to build. She thought about her grandfather and the legacy he'd left her. In the darkness, she made a promise, to herself, to her daughter, to the memory of Captain Thomas Alvarez. She would see this through. She would protect her family, honor her grandfather's wishes, and make sure the treasure was used for good. Outside, the sea whispered its secrets, and Marissa listened, ready for whatever came next. The next morning dawned gray and humid, the kind of weather that made the air feel heavy with possibility and threat. Marissa woke to the sound of rain tapping on the window, a gentle rhythm that belied the storm brewing in her life. She moved quietly through the house, careful not to disturb the fragile peace she'd found in the night. She made coffee, checked the locks, and peered out at the marina where the world seemed unchanged. Boats bobbing, gulls circling, fishermen preparing for another day. But Marissa knew better. Everything had changed. Sophia arrived just after sunrise, her hair damp from the mist, her eyes sharp and alert. "The dive team's ready," she said, her voice low. "We'll head out as soon as the weather clears. I've got 2 guys I trust, no questions, no loose lips. They know what's at stake." Marissa nodded, grateful for Sophia's calm competence. "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you." Sophia smiled, a rare softness in her expression. "You'd figure it out. You're tougher than you look." Elena joined them a few minutes later, her phone pressed to her ear. She ended the call with a sigh. The lawyers filed the paperwork. "We have a temporary injunction. No one can touch the wreck until the court decides, but that won't stop the vultures. We need to document everything today." They loaded the gear onto the Esperanza, moving quickly and quietly. The rain eased as they motored out of the marina, the sky brightening to a pale silver. Marissa stood at the bow, the wind in her hair, the map clutched in her hand. She felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration, as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, about to leap. The dive site was quiet, the water calm. Sophia and her team suited up, checking their tanks and cameras. Marissa watched, her heart pounding as they slipped beneath the surface, disappearing into the blue. She waited on deck, the minutes stretching into hours, her mind racing with worry and hope. When the divers finally resurfaced, they were grinning, their excitement infectious. "It's all there," Sophia said, pulling herself onto the deck. "Gold, jewels, artifacts, more than we thought. We got video, photos, everything. This is going to make history." Marissa felt a surge of relief, followed by a wave of anxiety. "What now?" Elena answered, her tone brisk. "We take the evidence to the authorities on our terms. We control the story. We make sure your name is on every document, every photo, and we keep you and Lila safe." They returned to the marina, unloading the gear and securing the evidence. Marissa hid the most important items, the ledger, the flash drive, a few small artifacts, in a safe deposit box at the local bank. She felt a little safer, but the sense of danger lingered, like a shadow she couldn't shake. That afternoon, a reporter from the local paper showed up at the marina, asking questions about the dive, the wreck, the rumors of treasure. Marissa kept her answers vague, deflecting with practiced ease, but she saw the hunger in the reporter's eyes, the way he lingered on her every word. After he left, Elena pulled Marissa aside. "We need to get ahead of this. If the story breaks before we're ready, we lose control. I'll set up an interview with someone we trust. We tell your story, your way," Marissa agreed, though the thought of going public terrified her. She thought of Lila, of the life they'd built, of the dangers that came with fame and fortune. But she also thought of her grandfather, of the promise she'd made. She wouldn't let fear win. That night, Marissa called Lila, her voice trembling with emotion. "I love you, sweetheart. I'll be home soon. I love you too, Mama. Did you find the treasure?" Marissa smiled, tears in her eyes. "I did, and I'm going to make sure it helps people. Just like Grandpa would have wanted." After the call, Marissa sat on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one. She thought about the journey she'd taken, the risks, the fears, the moments of doubt. She thought about the people who had helped her, and the ones who had tried to stop her. She thought about the future, uncertain but full of hope. As the night deepened, Marissa made another promise. To herself, to Lila, to the memory of Captain Thomas Alvarez. She would see this through. She would protect her family, honor her grandfather's wishes, and make sure the treasure was used for good. The sea was calm, the stars bright, and for the first time in a long time, Marissa felt at peace. The next day, the world seemed to shift beneath Marissa's feet. News of the discovery had started to ripple through the small town, whispers growing into rumors, rumors into headlines. The local paper ran a story about the single mother who found a fortune beneath the sea, and by noon, reporters and curiosity seekers were gathering at the marina, hoping for a glimpse of the woman at the center of the storm. Marissa tried to keep her head down, but it was impossible to hide. Everywhere she went, people stared, some with awe, others with envy, a few with open suspicion. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if the gold itself had painted a target on her back. Elena moved quickly, arranging for a trusted journalist, an old friend from her days as a legal correspondent, to meet Marissa in a quiet corner of the Marina Cafe. The journalist, a woman named Carmen, was calm and kind, her questions thoughtful rather than prying. "Why do you think your grandfather left this to you?" Carmen asked, her recorder resting between them. Marissa hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think he wanted someone to finish what he started. Someone who wouldn't just see the gold, but the story behind it. The sacrifices, the cost. He wanted it to mean something." Carmen nodded, jotting notes. "And what do you want to do with it?" Marissa looked out the window, watching the sunlight dance on the water. "I want to make sure it helps people. I want to honor my grandfather's memory. And I want to keep my daughter safe." The interview was over in less than an hour, but Carmen's story, published the next morning, changed everything. It painted Marissa not as a gold digger or a lucky fool, but as a woman of courage and conviction, someone who had inherited not just a fortune, but a legacy. The public response was immediate. Letters poured in, some offering congratulations, others asking for help, a few making threats. Marissa read them all, her emotions swinging between gratitude and fear. Meanwhile, the legal battle over the wreck intensified. The state filed an injunction claiming the Santa Lucia as a historical site. A private salvage company threatened to sue, insisting they had rights to the cargo. International lawyers began circling, drawn by rumors of artifacts with ties to multiple countries. Elena and the maritime lawyer worked around the clock, filing motions, gathering evidence, and negotiating with government officials. Sophia coordinated with the dive team, ensuring the site was protected and the documentation airtight. Marissa felt caught in the middle, her life no longer her own. She missed Lila desperately, their nightly phone calls a lifeline in the chaos. "When are you coming home, Mama?" Lila asked, her voice small and hopeful. "Soon, sweetheart. I promise." But Marissa knew it might not be soon enough. The threats were becoming more direct. Anonymous calls in the night, strangers lurking near the house, a brick thrown through the window with a note, "The sea takes what it wants." Elena insisted on hiring security, and for the first time, Marissa found herself with a bodyguard, a quiet, watchful woman named Tasha, who moved with the calm assurance of someone who had seen danger before. Despite the fear, Marissa refused to back down. She met with museum curators, historians, and community leaders, discussing how the artifacts could be displayed, how the gold could fund scholarships and community projects. She spoke at town meetings, her voice steady even as her hands shook. One evening, as she walked along the dock, Sophia joined her, the two women moving in companionable silence. "You're doing good, you know," Sophia said quietly. "Most people would have run by now." Marissa smiled, the tension easing for a moment. "I don't feel brave. I just feel tired." Sophia laughed, a warm sound in the cool night air. "That's how you know you're doing it right." They stood together, watching the moon rise over the water, the future uncertain, but full of possibility. That night, Marissa dreamed of her grandfather. He stood on the deck of the Santa Lucia, the wind in his hair, his eyes full of pride and sorrow. "You're almost there, mija," he whispered. "Don't let them take what matters most." She woke with tears on her cheeks, but also with a new sense of resolve. She would see this through. For her grandfather, for Lila, for herself. The days blurred together as the legal and emotional battles raged on. Marisa found herself swept up in a world she'd never imagined. Courtrooms and press conferences, meetings with government officials, interviews with historians and museum directors. Each day brought new challenges, new faces, and new threats. But through it all, she clung to her purpose: to protect her daughter, honor her grandfather, and ensure the treasure was used for good. The state's lawyers were relentless, arguing that the Santa Lucia was a matter of public heritage, that the gold and artifacts belonged to the people, not to a single family. The salvage company's attorneys were even more aggressive, accusing Marisa of fraud, of hiding evidence, of conspiring to steal what they claimed was rightfully theirs. The pressure was immense, and more than once, Marisa wondered if she should just walk away. But every time she thought of giving up, she remembered Lila's voice, her grandfather's letter, and the faces of the people who had helped her along the way. She remembered the feeling of the gold in her hands, the weight of history and hope. She couldn't let it be lost to greed or bureaucracy. Elena and the maritime lawyer, Mr. Patel, worked tirelessly, building a case that was as much about justice as it was about law. They gathered testimony from experts, presented the ledger and the photos, and argued that Marisa's grandfather had acted not out of selfishness, but out of a desire to protect something precious from those who would exploit it. Meanwhile, Sophia and her dive team continued to document the wreck, uncovering new artifacts with every dive. Ancient coins, religious relics, even a sealed chest filled with letters from the 1800s. Each discovery added to the story, painting a picture of a ship that was more than just a vessel for gold, but a time capsule of lives and dreams lost to the sea. The media frenzy only grew. National news outlets picked up the story, and soon Marisa's face was everywhere. On TV, in newspapers, online. She received offers for book deals, movie rights, even reality shows. She turned them all down, unwilling to let her family's story become just another spectacle. But the attention brought danger as well. One night, as Marisa returned to the house, she found the door ajar. Her heart raced as she stepped inside, calling out for Tasha. The bodyguard appeared from the shadows, her gun drawn, her eyes scanning the room. "It's clear," Tasha said, her voice calm, "but someone was here. They were looking for something." Marisa's mind raced. The ledger, the flash drive, the artifacts. She checked the hiding places, relief flooding her when she found everything untouched. But the message was clear. She was being watched, and the people after the treasure were getting desperate. Elena insisted on moving Marisa to a safer location, a small, gated house on the edge of town, with security cameras and reinforced locks. Lila was brought to stay with her, the reunion a balm to Marisa's frayed nerves. Holding her daughter close, Marisa felt a surge of determination. She would not let fear dictate her life. With Lila by her side, Marisa found new strength. She involved her daughter in the process, explaining as much as she could without frightening her. They visited the museum together, meeting with curators, and seeing the first of the artifacts displayed behind glass. The story of the Santa Lucia told for all to see. Lila's eyes shone with pride. "That was Grandpa's ship, wasn't it, Mama?" Marisa nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. And now everyone will know what he did." The legal battle reached its climax in a packed courtroom, the air thick with anticipation. Marisa took the stand, her voice steady as she told her story, of her grandfather's courage, of the discovery, of her desire to use the treasure for good. She spoke not just for herself, but for every family who had ever been touched by the sea, by loss, by hope. The judge listened, his expression unreadable. When the verdict finally came, Marisa held her breath. In light of the evidence presented and the unique circumstances of this case, the court finds in favor of Marisa Alvarez. The Santa Lucia's cargo shall be held in trust, with oversight from the state and local museums, to ensure its preservation and benefit to the community. Ms. Alvarez is recognized as the legal heir and primary steward of the discovery. The courtroom erupted in applause. Marisa wept, relief and joy mingling in her tears. She hugged Lila, Elena, Sophia, and even Mr. Patel, grateful beyond words. But even as the dust settled, Marisa knew the journey was not over. There were still decisions to be made, challenges to face, and a legacy to build. But for the first time, she felt truly free. Free to choose her own path, to honor her family, and to turn a fortune born of loss into a future filled with hope. The weeks that followed the verdict were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. Marisa found herself at the center of a community transformed by the discovery. The Santa Lucia's cargo became more than just a collection of gold and artifacts. It became a symbol of resilience, of history reclaimed, of hope restored. The museum's grand opening drew crowds from across the state, and Marissa was invited to speak at the ceremony. Standing at the podium, Lila's small hand in hers, Marissa looked out at the sea of faces. Locals, historians, school children, even a few of the divers who had helped bring the treasure to light. She took a deep breath, her voice carrying through the hall. My grandfather believed that some treasures are meant to be shared, not hidden. He risked everything to protect this ship and its secrets, not for himself, but for all of us. Today, we honor his memory by making sure this history belongs to everyone. The applause was thunderous, and Marissa felt a wave of gratitude for the support she'd received. After the ceremony, she walked through the exhibit with Lila, pointing out the gold bars, the ancient coins, the letters from long-lost sailors. Each artifact told a story, and Marissa made sure her daughter understood the importance of remembering where they came from. But even as the community celebrated, Marissa knew there were still shadows lurking at the edges of her new life. The threats hadn't disappeared entirely. The salvage company, though defeated in court, continued to send letters, hinting at appeals and new lawsuits. International interest in the artifacts brought diplomats and collectors to her door, each with their own agenda. Elena and Mr. Patel remained vigilant, handling the legal and diplomatic challenges with skill and determination. Sophia, now a local celebrity herself, used her newfound influence to advocate for marine conservation and historical preservation, turning the Santa Lucia's story into a rallying cry for protecting the ocean's secrets. Marissa, for her part, focused on building a future for Lila. She set up a charitable foundation with a portion of the gold, funding scholarships for children of fishermen and sailors, supporting local schools, and providing grants for marine research. She worked closely with the museum, helping to design educational programs that would inspire the next generation to value history, courage, and community. Life settled into a new rhythm. Marissa and Lila moved into a small house near the water, a place filled with light and laughter. They spent weekends exploring the coastline, searching for shells and stories, building memories that would last a lifetime. One evening, as the sun set over the bay, Marissa sat on the porch with Sophia, the two women sharing a quiet moment of reflection. "Do you ever miss the old days?" Marissa asked, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Sophia smiled, her eyes soft. "Sometimes. Life was simpler before all this. But I wouldn't trade it. We did something important, Marissa. We changed lives." Marissa nodded, feeling the truth of Sophia's words. She thought of her grandfather, of the risks he'd taken, the sacrifices he'd made. She thought of the journey that had brought her here, the people who had stood by her side, the challenges they had overcome together. As darkness fell, Marissa felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The fear and uncertainty that had haunted her since the day of the phone call had faded, replaced by a quiet confidence. She had faced the storm and come through stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to honor her family's legacy. But even as she embraced her new life, Marissa knew the story wasn't over. The sea still held secrets, and there were still battles to fight. Against greed, against ignorance, against the forces that would try to claim what wasn't theirs. But she was ready. She had found her voice, her purpose, and her place in the world. That night, as she tucked Lila into bed, Marissa whispered a promise. "No matter what happens, I'll always protect you. We're a team, you and me. And together we can face anything." Lila smiled sleepily, her trust absolute. "I know, Mama, you're my hero." Marissa kissed her daughter's forehead, her heart full. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more storms to weather. But for now, she allowed herself to rest, to dream, and to hope. The months rolled by, and the story of the Santa Lucia became woven into the fabric of the town. School children visited the museum on field trips, their eyes wide as they listened to tales of storms, shipwrecks, and hidden gold. Local businesses flourished as tourists arrived, eager to see the legendary cargo and perhaps catch a glimpse of the woman who had brought it to light. Marissa found herself recognized wherever she went, sometimes greeted with gratitude, sometimes with envy, but always with curiosity. Despite the attention, Marissa worked hard to keep life as normal as possible for Lila. She volunteered at the school, helped organize community events, and made sure their home was a sanctuary from the outside world. The foundation she'd started grew quickly, attracting donations and support from across the country. Scholarships were awarded, research grants funded, and a new marine science center was built on the edge of town, its mission to protect the ocean that had given and taken so much. But not all the changes were easy. The salvage company's threats turned into a drawn-out appeal, dragging Marissa back into courtrooms and depositions. International collectors continued to pressure the museum, offering vast sums for the rarest artifacts. Even some locals, emboldened by rumors and greed, began to question whether Marisa had kept some of the treasure for herself. Through it all, Marisa leaned on her friends. Elena remained her fiercest advocate, navigating the legal labyrinth with skill and tenacity. Sophia became a fixture in their lives, her bond with Lila growing as strong as her friendship with Marisa. Tasha, the bodyguard, stayed on as both protector and confidant, her quiet presence a constant reassurance. One evening, as Marisa sat on the porch watching Lila and Sophia play soccer in the yard, Elena arrived with news. "The appeals court ruled in our favor," she announced, a rare smile breaking through her usual seriousness. "The salvage company is out of options. The treasure stays here, under your stewardship and the museum's care." Relief washed over Marisa, so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She hugged Elena, gratitude and exhaustion mingling in her embrace. "Thank you for everything." Elena squeezed her hand. "You did this, Marisa. You stood your ground. You honored your grandfather and protected your daughter. I'm just glad I could help." That night, Marisa allowed herself to celebrate. She invited her closest friends to the house, and together they shared a meal, laughter, and stories of the journey that had brought them together. Lila fell asleep in Sophia's lap, her dreams filled with adventures and heroes. As the evening wound down, Marisa stepped outside, the cool night air refreshing against her skin. She looked up at the stars, remembering the nights she'd spent worrying, doubting, fearing the future. Now, those fears seemed distant, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and hope. But even in victory, Marisa knew the responsibility she carried. The gold and artifacts were safe, but their true value lay in what they could do for others. She met regularly with the museum board, ensuring that the exhibits were accessible to all, that the foundation's funds were used wisely, that the story of the Santa Lucia was told with honesty and respect. She also began to write, pouring her experiences into a memoir, not for fame or fortune, but as a record for Lila, and for anyone who might one day find themselves at the crossroads of history and destiny. She wrote about her grandfather, about the choices he'd made, about the courage it took to do the right thing when the world demanded otherwise. As the first anniversary of the discovery approached, the town planned a celebration. There would be a parade, a festival, and a special ceremony at the museum. Marisa was asked to give the keynote speech, and though the thought made her nervous, she agreed. She wanted to honor not just her family, but everyone who had helped her along the way. On the day of the celebration, Marisa stood before the crowd, Lila at her side, her voice clear and strong. "We are all stewards of history," she said. "The treasures we find, whether gold or knowledge or love, are not just for us, but for those who come after. My grandfather taught me that the greatest legacy is not what we keep, but what we give. Thank you for helping me give this story and this hope to the world." The applause was long and heartfelt, and as Marisa looked out at the faces of her friends, her neighbors, and her daughter, she knew she had truly come home. As the celebration faded into memory, Marisa found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here, the chaos of discovery, the fear and uncertainty, the battles fought in courtrooms and in her own heart. All of it had shaped her into someone she barely recognized, yet someone she was proud to be. She had become a protector, a storyteller, a leader in her community. But most of all, she had become the mother Lila needed, strong, resilient, and unafraid to stand up for what was right. Life settled into a new, gentler rhythm. The museum flourished, drawing visitors from around the world. The foundation's work expanded, funding projects that reached far beyond the town, clean water initiatives in coastal villages, scholarships for girls in science, support for families affected by maritime disasters. Marisa traveled occasionally, speaking at conferences and universities, always returning home with new ideas and a deeper appreciation for the power of legacy. Lila thrived in this new world. She made friends easily, her curiosity and kindness winning over even the most skeptical adults. She loved visiting the museum, where she would stand in front of the Santa Lucia's artifacts and tell her own version of the story to anyone who would listen. "My great-grandpa was a hero," she'd say, her eyes shining. "He saved the treasure so we could all learn from it." Marisa watched her daughter with pride, grateful for the chance to give her a life filled with possibility. She knew there would be challenges ahead. No life was free from storms, but she felt ready to face them, armed with the lessons of the past and the support of her chosen family. One afternoon, as Marisa walked along the beach, she was joined by Sophia. The two women strolled in companionable silence, the waves lapping at their feet. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't answered that phone call?" Sophia asked, her tone light but thoughtful. Marisa smiled, the memory vivid. All the time. I think about how close I came to missing all of this. How easy it would have been to let fear or doubt win. Sophia nodded. But you didn't. You chose to step into the unknown. That takes courage. Marisa looked out at the horizon, the sun dipping low. I think about my grandfather too, about the choices he made. He must have been so lonely, carrying that secret all those years. I wish I could tell him that it was worth it, that we're okay. Sophia squeezed her shoulder. As the year drew to a close, the town gathered for a festival celebrating the Santa Lucia. There were music and dancing, food and laughter, and a sense of unity that Marisa had never felt before. She stood on the edge of the crowd, watching Lila twirl with her friends, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been long and difficult, filled with danger and doubt, but it had also been filled with love, with courage, with moments of grace that had changed her forever. Marisa knew there would be more storms ahead, more choices to make, more stories to tell, but she was ready. She had found her place in the world, and she would protect it, no matter what. Winter brought a rare quiet to the town, the tourist crowds thinning, the days growing shorter and cooler. Marisa cherished the slower pace, using the time to reconnect with herself and with Lila. They spent evenings reading by the fire, mornings walking the beach in search of shells and sea glass. The museum, though less busy, remained a hub of learning and wonder, and Marisa often found herself drawn there, lingering in the quiet halls, reflecting on all that had changed. One afternoon, as Marisa was reviewing plans for a new exhibit, she was approached by a young woman with a nervous smile. "Ms. Alvarez? My name is Ana. I'm a graduate student at the university. I've been studying the Santa Lucia, and I was hoping you might answer a few questions for my thesis." Marisa welcomed her, offering coffee and a seat. Ana's questions were thoughtful, probing not just the facts of the discovery, but the emotions, the choices, the impact on the community. Marisa found herself opening up, sharing stories she hadn't told before, about her fears, her doubts, the moments when she almost gave up. Ana listened intently, taking notes. "Do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" she asked quietly. Marisa considered the question. "Sometimes I wish it had been easier, that there hadn't been so much fear, so many threats. But I wouldn't trade what I've learned, or the people I've met, or the good we've been able to do. The hard parts made the rest possible." Ana smiled, closing her notebook. "Thank you. I think that's the heart of my thesis, how adversity can lead to something beautiful if we let it." After Ana left, Marisa wandered through the museum, her thoughts lingering on the past. She paused in front of the Santa Lucia's bell, its surface worn smooth by time and salt. She ran her fingers over the engraved letters, feeling a connection to her grandfather, to the sailors who had come before, to the generations who would come after. That evening, Marisa and Lila cooked dinner together, laughter filling the kitchen. Lila recounted her day at the Marine Center, her excitement bubbling over as she described a new species of fish she'd helped identify. Marisa listened, her heart swelling with pride. She saw in her daughter the same curiosity, the same courage that had driven her own journey. Later, as they sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, Lila asked, "Mama, do you think there are more treasures out there? More stories waiting to be found?" Marisa smiled, gazing at the moonlit waves. "I think the world is full of treasures, sweetheart. Some are buried in the sea, some in old letters or forgotten memories. But the best treasures are the ones we make. Friendship, kindness, love." Lila nodded, thoughtful. "I want to find those kinds of treasures." "You will," Marisa promised, "and you'll share them with the world." As the weeks passed, Marisa continued to balance her roles: mother, steward, advocate, friend. She worked with the museum to launch a new initiative, inviting families from across the region to share their own stories of the sea. The project brought people together, weaving a tapestry of memories and dreams that enriched the community even further. Sophia, ever the adventurer, began planning a new expedition, this time to document the coral reefs threatened by climate change. She invited Marisa and Lila to join her, and together they spent weekends diving, photographing, and learning about the fragile beauty of the underwater world. Through it all, Marisa never lost sight of what mattered most. She cherished the quiet moments, the laughter, the sense of belonging that had once seemed so distant. She knew that life would bring more challenges, more storms, but she faced them with a steady heart and an open mind. One night, as she tucked Lila into bed, Marisa whispered, "Thank you for being my greatest adventure." Lila hugged her tightly. "Thank you for being my hero." As Marisa turned out the light, she felt a deep sense of peace. The journey that had begun with a phone call and a map had led her to a life richer than she had ever imagined. She had found her treasure, not in gold or jewels, but in love, in community, in the courage to keep searching for hope. Spring arrived with a burst of color and energy. the town waking from its winter slumber. Wildflowers bloomed along the dunes, and the marina buzzed with the return of boats and laughter. The museum prepared for a new season of visitors, unveiling an expanded exhibit that told not just the story of the Santa Lucia, but of the people whose lives it had touched. Marissa stood at the entrance on opening day, greeting families, answering questions, and watching as children pressed their faces to the glass, marveling at the gold and artifacts that had once been lost to the sea. The foundation's work continued to grow. Marissa oversaw new scholarships, helped launch a mentorship program for young women in science, and partnered with local fishermen to promote sustainable practices. The Marine Science Center, now a regional leader, hosted its first international conference, drawing experts from around the world to share research and ideas. Lila, now a confident and curious preteen, volunteered as a junior guide, leading tours and sharing her own perspective on the Santa Lucia's legacy. One afternoon, as Marissa walked through the museum, she was stopped by an elderly man with kind eyes and a weathered face. He introduced himself as Captain Ruiz, a retired sailor who had once served with her grandfather. "He was a good man," Ruiz said, his voice thick with emotion. "He always said the sea was both a gift and a test. I think he'd be proud of what you've done." Marissa thanked him, her heart full. She listened as he shared stories of her grandfather's bravery, his sense of humor, his unwavering commitment to doing what was right. The conversation left Marissa with a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that the choices she made mattered not just for herself and Lila, but for everyone who looked to the past for guidance and hope. As the days grew longer, Marissa found herself drawn more and more to the water. She and Lila spent weekends sailing with Sophia, exploring hidden coves and learning the rhythms of the tides. On one such trip, they discovered a small, uninhabited island, its shores littered with driftwood and wildflowers. They picnicked on the sand, telling stories and dreaming about the future. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, Marissa sat with Lila and Sophia, watching the waves. "Do you ever wonder what comes next?" Lila asked, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "All the time," Marissa replied, smiling. "But I've learned that the best adventures are the ones we don't plan. We just have to be brave enough to follow where they lead." Sophia nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "The sea always has more to teach us. Every journey changes us, even if we end up right where we started." They sat in companionable silence, the sound of the surf a gentle lullaby. Marissa felt a deep sense of contentment, a certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Back in town, preparations began for the annual festival celebrating the Santa Lucia. This year, Marissa was asked to serve as Grand Marshal, leading the parade through streets lined with banners and flowers. She accepted with humility, knowing that the honor belonged as much to her friends and neighbors as it did to her. On the day of the festival, Marissa rode at the head of the parade, Lila and Sophia by her side. The crowd cheered, waving flags and tossing confetti. Marissa waved back, her heart swelling with gratitude for the community that had embraced her, for the journey that had brought her here, for the future that stretched out before them like an open sea. That night, as fireworks lit up the sky, Marissa stood on the beach, Lila's hand in hers. She thought of her grandfather, of the choices he had made, of the legacy he had entrusted to her. She thought of the storms they had weathered, the treasures they had found, the love that had carried them through. As the last firework faded, Marissa whispered a silent promise to the sea, to honor the past, to cherish the present, and to face the future with courage and hope. Summer's warmth settled over the town, and with it came a sense of fulfillment that Marissa had never known before. The days were long and golden, filled with laughter, learning, and the gentle rhythm of the tides. The story of the Santa Lucia had become more than a legend. It was now a living part of the community, woven into the fabric of daily life. Children played at being explorers. Teachers used the museum as a classroom, and families gathered on the docks to watch the sunset, sharing stories of their own. Marissa's life, once defined by struggle and uncertainty, had blossomed into something rich and meaningful. She continued her work with the foundation, expanding its reach to neighboring towns and even distant coastal villages. She helped launch a literacy program for children of migrant workers, and the Marine Science Center's research led to new protections for endangered species in the region. Each success was a reminder that the true value of her inheritance was not in gold, but in the lives it touched. Lila grew more independent with each passing day, her curiosity and compassion deepening. She spent her summer volunteering at the Science Center, helping younger children discover the wonders of the ocean. She and Marissa still shared quiet moments, late night, talks on the porch, early morning walks along the shore, dreams whispered to the waves. Their bond, forged in adversity, had become unbreakable. Sophia, too, found new purpose. She started a non-profit dedicated to preserving shipwrecks and marine habitats, drawing on her experience with the Santa Lucia to inspire others. She and Marisa remained close, their friendship a steady anchor in a world that was always changing. One evening, as a gentle breeze rustled the palm trees, Marisa hosted a gathering at her home. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues filled the yard, their laughter mingling with the sound of the sea. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Marisa raised a glass in a quiet toast. "To the journeys that find us," she said, her voice steady and full of gratitude. "To the courage to face the unknown, to the wisdom to share what we find, and to the love that carries us home." The crowd echoed her words, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Marisa looked around at the faces illuminated by lantern light. Elena, steadfast and wise. Sophia, adventurous and loyal. Tasha, ever watchful. And Lila, her heart and hope. She felt the presence of her grandfather, not as a shadow of the past, but as a guiding light for the future. As the evening wound down, Marisa slipped away to the beach, Lila following at her side. They walked in silence, the sand cool beneath their feet, the stars bright above. At the water's edge, Marisa knelt and let the waves wash over her hands, feeling the pulse of the ocean that had given her so much. Lila sat beside her, leaning into her shoulder. "Do you think Grandpa can see us?" she asked softly. Marisa smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. "I think he's with us every time we do something brave, every time we help someone, every time we choose hope over fear." They sat together, mother and daughter, listening to the endless song of the sea. Marisa thought of all they had overcome, the danger, the doubt, the temptation to give up. She thought of the legacy she would leave, not just for Lila, but for every child who dreamed of adventure, every family who found strength in each other, every community that chose unity over division. As dawn approached, Marisa and Lila walked home, their hearts light, their spirits at peace. The Santa Lucia's gold had changed their lives, but it was love, courage, and truth that had set them free. And so, the story of Marisa Alvarez, the single mother who discovered a sunken cargo and an inheritance beyond imagination, became a beacon for all who heard it. A reminder that the greatest treasures are not found in the depths of the sea, but in the choices we make, the people we cherish, and the hope we carry forward. If you believe in the power of truth, legacy, and second chances, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire and uplift, because sometimes the real adventure begins when you least expect it, and the greatest inheritance is the life you build, one brave choice at a time.